there's an aspect of potential or encountering the strange, which is very important, because there's an aspect of surprise and wonder which comes with encountering that which we don't know, which is also part of the pattern of reality. And so there's an idea, right, in ancient stories that there are treasures hidden in the deep, right? That there are treasures hidden in the outside. There are treasures being guarded by monsters. And so there's a sense in which moving out into potentiality is also a way in which to kind of discover these pearls, right? These secrets, these precious stones, these gems that are kind of hidden in the unknown. So that's definitely part of the pattern as well.
Yeah, I think we have another question by Jordan.
Go ahead. Actually, it's a question from Tammy, so I'll let her ask it.
How did Darwin bring Plato back?
Because by coming back into the world of biology, he inevitably brought back purpose-driven action, or selection is the best way to understand it, right? He brought back the idea of selection, and selection is not chaos, right? Selection is not random. Selection is purpose-oriented, and it's purpose-oriented towards the perpetuation of the seed, the perpetuation of the identity. And so
this is the argument that I've been trying to put forth with Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. It's like, you guys, there's a big contradiction here between Darwin and Newton, or the way we look at Newton. It's like, this is a big problem.
And so it's a surprise. It's like, it's a surprise, I think, that nobody kind of expected, and nobody necessarily framed it completely that way, but it did end up bringing back the idea of quality back into the picture, right? Because you choose for a reason, and the reason is something which is closer to the perpetuation of your own identity.
Yes,
and it's like
crafted by evolutionary forces. And so meaning itself is a consequence of the evolutionary process, and how that tangles up with the theological perspective that you brought to bear today. That's an incredibly complicated and difficult problem. But as you said, God calls the earth to manifest its potential. So,
yeah, and so you could, how can I say this? It's like, so you can see it bottom up, which is, I mean, I've been expressing it more bottom up recently, just because people are kind of scientifically minded. But you can see it completely top down. Like, you can see it as like I was trying to explain to you, as the evolutionary process of maintaining your identity is a reflection of a deeper pattern, which is a cosmic pattern of how the world actually unfolds. And so it's not necessarily that evolutionary process brought about this. It's that the reason why evolutionary processes work the way they do and do what they do is because they're functioning within a larger system.
Yeah, so
they're functioning within, they're imaging, they're manifesting the way the world works. And so that's how the world works.
That discussion of subdue starts to become so relevant, because as creatures make their choices and live or die by them, what they are in fact doing is this spiritual process of subduing. And if they do it improperly, then they perish.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's an image, like we were talking about the idea of man at the outset, and so this is represented in iconography, for example, as the image of Christ, Jesus Christ, human Jesus Christ, creating the world, which is just like, for people, it just freaks them out, because like, how does this work? How is this possible? But that's the understanding. There is a manner in which how can I say this? And there's a manner in which, just like we have this Christian idea that Christ acts as an axis, which transforms the past and the present, let's say, which kind of acts as this central axis. You could say that intelligence, as it manifests itself in the world, does the same. That is, the human person, human intelligence, goes back into the past and makes sense of it, and goes into the future and makes sense of it. And so you could say that intelligence is at the outset. The things don't exist outside of this capacity to contain them in consciousness. And so so the world is born in consciousness. And the past as well. The past is born in consciousness too. So all those processes that people try to understand, all the Big Bang and all this stuff, it's still born in man. Like it's still born in consciousness. So the real origin is not the Big Bang. This is going to be the weirdest thing you're going to understand. The real origin is the intelligence, which is able to even perceive the Big Bang or see it as a pattern, as not just a quantum field which never changes. It's like perceiving change, transformation, identity, participating it. Like that's the origin of reality. So the description in Genesis, it's like I'm trying to help you see that it is an actual description of the origin of the world. It's not a metaphor, like in the way that we want to think about it. It's not just a fairy tale, which is helping us understand things we don't understand. It is describing the manner in which reality originates. And it originates in meaning, then phenomena, not phenomena. Phenomena first as a puzzle, right? I talked about that, like this potential that bubbles up and calls to be answered, and then meaning which comes down. So you can see the same from all scientific theory is like that. It's like something presents itself as a puzzle and you're like, what is that? And then here comes the logos, the seed, which comes in and patterns it or identifies it, judges it, separates it from other things in the way that happens in the first chapter of Genesis.
Okay, there's two more psychological questions. I'm going to tell them both together because I think they are linked. And Jordan, you may also have something to contribute to that one. How would you work with the problem of inclusive, exclusive categories in these times? Projection, scapegoating. And the other question that's, I think, is related, where do the movements of cancel culture or Black Lives Matter fit, or how to make sense of these movements into this intelligence model?
Yeah. So one of the things we're seeing is we're seeing out of control versions of this identification system or the system of communion. The way in which reality works is fractal. And so communities or identities embed themselves in each other. That's how it works. And so in a normal kind of traditional world, you can be a family, in a neighborhood, in a community, right? In a nation, in a church. And it's like, it's all embedded. And you can also participate in all these different identities. You can be in a club or you can be in this and that. And so it all kind of works together. So one of the problems we're having right now is that, let's say, kind of woke culture has understood the problem of identity, right? They understand it. They understand the problem of exclusion. But the answer they give is that they want to account for everything. They want everything to fit. Now, the problem is that it's impossible. It's an impossible, and it's even a dangerous thing. And there are a lot of ancient traditions which help you understand that. So for example, like you have the idea in Jewish law that you have to leave a fringe on your vestment, or you have to leave the corners of the field untilled for the strangers. All of these patterns are there to manifest the fact that you can't have a system which is both coherent and complete at the same time. You can't. Those two things.
Let me interrupt just for a second.
Go for it.
Well, the ziggurat answers that question too, because people can be included at a higher level of unity and excluded at a lower. And so part of this is conceptual confusion. It's like the problem of category is the problem of inclusion and exclusion. And exclusion can lead to demonization very easily. And that's a big problem, a fundamental problem. But the problem that you're talking about that's manifesting socially is a consequence of this lack of understanding of the hierarchy of value. So the people who are pushing diversity, inclusivity, and equity are saying something like, look, we're all divinely human. And you object to that by saying, well, yes, but we still need to differentiate ourselves into specialized categories. And we have to think through that very carefully so that we subdue things properly.
No, exactly. And so what's happened is that people want to make inclusivity the only value. really the only value because of the problem of exclusion. And so what happens, and this is what I'm going to say is going to seem radical to some, but what we're seeing in this process is the actual destruction of the world. And it's actually this type of thinking can actually destroy the world or lead to absolute tyranny, one or the other, or maybe one because causing the other. So imagine you have a basketball team, right? You have a basketball team. The purpose of the team is to play basketball, to win the championship, to do this. But then you say, no. The purpose of the team is inclusion. And now imagine you do that for every single level of reality and every single communion. You say that the purpose of your group is inclusion. But so then you sacrifice the actual purpose of the group, which is to play basketball, to win games and everything, for inclusion. And you end up doing that in all aspects of reality. What you're doing is you're devouring the purpose. You're eating it. It's like it's becoming eaten by this thing. It's a monster. It's like it's the potential. It's like potentiality is infinite. It's like you need to let all this potential in. And so we were like, this is wrong, right? You're excluding this potential. So we need to kind of bring all this potential in. So what it does is it's like a sea monster that comes up and devours the identities. And so either it brings about a kind of fragmentation and chaos and breakdown, but often the world can't sustain itself that way. So what it tends to do is it tends to lead into a kind of absolute identity. And it's weird because the way it seems to be happening, it's just the strangest thing, is that it's like people are trying to make inclusivity as the tyrannical system itself, which is seems like it's not possible, but that seems to be what's happening, is that inclusivity is going to turn into tyranny. But what's important is that gesture is going to create something like absolute scapegoats. Absolute scapegoats, which is that those that will refuse to participate in this weird principle of inclusivity will be absolutely excluded. It's the only sin, and it's an unforgivable sin. And so we're moving toward that, and it's kind of scary to see it happen.